for 10 years. I did the work of 3 people while being paid for one, most of that time. I ignored the quiet voice in my head telling me something wasn't right. The moment that finally broke me happened on a gray Tuesday morning, in a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and cheap perfume. My manager, Diane Holloway, perfect hair, polished smile, blazer worth more than my monthly paycheck, stood at the head of the table, looking unusually pleased with herself. "I'm excited to announce," she said, her voice bright, almost proud, "that Rachel Whitmore will be joining us as Senior Operations Coordinator. Senior Operations Coordinator, my position, or at least, the job I had been doing unofficially for nearly a decade." The room responded with polite applause. I didn't. Sitting beside Diane was Rachel, her church friend. I had met her twice before when she came in to observe. On her second day, she had leaned toward me and asked, completely serious, "How do you open a spreadsheet?" I had stared at her, waiting for her to laugh. She never did. Now she sat there smiling like she had earned this. Rachel brings fresh energy and strong leadership qualities. Diane continued. My jaw tightened. I waited for acknowledgement, for even a brief mention of the years I had carried this department. It never came. Instead, Diane turned to me. "Arila, you'll train Rachel and transition your responsibilities. No complaints. We're a team." That was the moment something inside me shifted. I didn't argue. I didn't react. I stood up slowly, reached into my bag, and pulled out an envelope I had written 3 months ago. I placed it on the table. Diane frowned. "What's that? My resignation," I said. And this time I wasn't asking. If this story resonates with you, even just a little, consider subscribing to the channel. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from right now? What's the temperature like where you are? This is a fictional story, with a few AI-enhanced details to make the experience more vivid and immersive. So maybe grab a warm cup of tea, settle in, and stay with me. Because what happened after I handed in my resignation was only the beginning. Diane stared at the envelope like it didn't belong to her reality. Then she laughed. Not a real laugh. The kind people use when they think they still have control. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You're not resigning. Sit down." "Arila." I remained standing. "I already did the work of 3 people," I said quietly. "I'm not training a 4th. The room fell into a deeper silence, the kind that presses against your ears. A few co-workers shifted in their seats. No one spoke. No one moved. Diane's expression hardened. "You don't get to decide when you leave." I picked up my bag. "Actually," I replied, "I do." Her hand slammed against the table, sharp enough to make Rachel flinch. "No, you're not quitting. We need you." That word almost made me smile. Need. For 10 years. They needed my work, my time, my silence, just never enough to acknowledge it. Rachel's confidence had already started to crack. She glanced at Diane, then at me, like she was beginning to understand she had stepped into something she couldn't handle. Diane changed tactics fast. I could see it in her eyes. The anger pulled back, replaced by urgency. "Arila, wait," she said, her voice softer now. "Just stay until the end of the quarter. I'll talk to corporate. I'll fix the title. I'll get you a raise. Just don't do this today." It almost sounded sincere. Almost. "I've already given you 10 years. I said. "I'm not giving you another minute." I turned toward the door. Her voice snapped behind me, sharp and desperate. "If you walk out now, I'll make sure no company ever hires you again." I stopped, not because I was afraid, because for the first time. She sounded like she was. I turned back slowly, met her eyes, and smiled not kindly, but clearly. "Good luck with that," I said. Then I walked out. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off Diane's voice mid-sentence. For a second, I just stood there, staring at my reflection in the brushed metal, as if I didn't quite recognize the person who had just walked away. I expected relief. maybe even satisfaction. Instead, I felt nothing. My hands were shaking, my chest felt tight, like I had stepped off something solid without realizing how far the drop was. 10 years of routine, of structure, of knowing exactly where I belonged, and suddenly, it was gone. When the doors opened, the lobby looked exactly the same as it always had. People moving, phones ringing, the quiet hum of a system still running like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. Outside. The air felt colder than it should have. I walked to my car on instinct, my mind still trying to catch up with what I had just done. My old sedan sat in the same spot as every other day. But when I opened the door and sat inside, it felt unfamiliar. I gripped the steering wheel and stared through the windshield. What have I done? The question echoed louder than anything Diane had said. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't impulsive. I was the one people relied on. The one who stayed late, fixed errors no one else saw, kept everything moving even when things were breaking underneath. And now I had walked away from all of it in under 5 minutes. On the drive home, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls, messages, unknown numbers. I didn't check. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was. When I finally stepped into my apartment, the silence hit harder than the confrontation. No emails waiting, no deadlines, no pressure. Just stillness. I dropped my bag by the door, changed into something comfortable, and sat on the couch, staring at the blank screen across the room, for the first time in years. There was nothing demanding my attention, and that was when the weight of it all finally settled in. The silence didn't last long. The doorbell rang just as the weight of everything started pressing down harder than I could manage alone. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a second, I considered ignoring it, but something told me not to. When I opened the door, Lena stood there, my closest coworker, and the only person in that building who ever really saw what I carried. She held 2 coffees in one hand and a grocery bag in the other. I figured you'd either be crying, drinking, or staring at a wall, she said, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. So I came prepared for all 3. A small laugh escaped me before I could stop it. It felt unfamiliar, like something I hadn't used in a while. You actually did it, she said, setting everything down on the counter. You walked out. I did. She let out a low whistle. Diane is losing her mind. HR's scrambling. And Rachel! She paused, shaking her head slightly. She's in the bathroom crying because she doesn't know how to run the quarterly system. I closed my eyes briefly. The image was almost too perfect. We sat at the kitchen counter, eating in silence for a few minutes before Lena spoke again, her tone shifting. There's something you need to know, she said. I looked up. Diane never planned to promote you, she continued. Not once. The board approved a senior role 3 years ago. HR recommended you every time. My stomach tightened. Then why didn't it happen? Lena hesitated. Then answered carefully. Because Diane blocked it. She told them you weren't leadership material, that you were a workhorse. The word landed heavier than anything else that day. A workhorse. Not a leader. Not a candidate. Just someone useful. And Rachel, I asked quietly. She's been setting that up for months, Lena said. Diane pushed her through despite failing every requirement. HR fought it. But she overrode them. I stared at the table, something inside me shifting again, but this time, it wasn't shock. It was clarity turning into something sharper. My phone buzzed again on the counter, breaking the stillness between us. Lena glanced at it, then back at me. Please tell me you're not going to answer that. I wasn't planning to, but when I looked down, it wasn't Diane's name lighting up the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated, then tapped the notification. It wasn't a call this time. It was a voicemail transcription. Hello, Ira Lamore. This is Daniel Hayes from Corporate Compliance. We need to speak with you regarding recent events surrounding your resignation. My posture straightened without thinking. Compliance didn't call unless something was wrong. Seriously wrong. Lena leaned closer. Who is at Corporate Compliance? I said quietly. Her expression shifted instantly. That's not normal. No, it wasn't. A slow realization began to form in the back of my mind. Diane's reaction in that conference room, the panic, the sudden urgency to keep me from leaving, it hadn't just been about losing an employee. It had been about losing control. I think, I said slowly, this might not just be about me. Lena studied my face. What are you thinking? I exhaled, steadying my voice. I'm thinking there are things they don't want looked at too closely, because I had seen them, over the years. I had been copied on emails I wasn't meant to question. I had fixed numbers that didn't quite add up. I had taken on responsibilities that should have been spread across multiple roles, but never were. At the time, I told myself it wasn't my place. Now, I wasn't so sure. My phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. Same number. I picked it up this time, letting the screen glow in my hand. For 10 years. I had stayed quiet, stayed useful, stayed invisible. Now someone at the top was asking questions, and for the first time I had answers. I waited before calling back. Not because I was unsure, but because I needed the noise in my head to settle into something usable. Anger without direction was useless. I had spent 10 years learning that. 2 hours later, I picked up my phone and dialed the number from the voicemail. The line connected almost instantly. Arila Moore. A calm, steady voice said, "This is Daniel Reed from Corporate Compliance. Thank you for returning my call." "Yes," I replied. "I'm available. Before we proceed, I need to confirm, are you still employed by Northvale Systems?" "No," I said. "I resigned this morning." There was a brief pause. Not surprise, more like confirmation. "I see," he said. "We've received multiple internal reports regarding your former manager. We'd like to document your experience. This call will be recorded. Are you comfortable continuing? I am..." A secure link appeared on my screen. I opened it, set my phone down, and joined the call. Daniel appeared mid-40s. Composed. The kind of person who didn't waste time or words. "We'll begin with a simple question," he said. "When did you first notice irregularities?" For the first time in 10 years, someone wasn't asking me to fix the problem. They were asking me to explain it. So I did, calmly, precisely. No emotion, no exaggeration, just facts. How my workload increased after each round of layoffs. How responsibilities were reassigned to me without title or compensation. How promotions were promised, delayed, then quietly dismissed. How Diane redirected recognition, blocked approvals, and reshaped reporting lines to keep control centralized. Daniel didn't interrupt. He only took notes. Then he asked about Rachel. How long had she been present before the promotion? 2 weeks. I said. And her level of competency, I exhaled once. She didn't know how to operate the core system. There was a shift in his expression. And you were instructed to train her to replace you? Yes. He paused, then asked carefully, "Would you describe your resignation as voluntary?" I considered the question. "No," I said. It was the only option left. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then Daniel spoke again. "Do you have documentation?" I looked at my laptop. Already open beside me. "Yes," I said quietly. "I have everything. If you agree with the way I handled this, choosing to walk away instead of staying silent and accepting unfair treatment, leave a 1 in the comments. I'd really like to know how many of you would have made the same decision in that moment." Daniel leaned back slightly. Like a piece of the puzzle had just clicked into place. "Then we'll need you to submit everything," he said. "Emails, reports, internal messages, anything that supports your claims. I already organized it." I replied, by date, by category, and by incident. That seemed to get his attention. "Good," he said, "because this may extend beyond a standard internal complaint." A quiet weight settled in my chest, meaning I asked, "We're looking into potential violations of hiring protocols, misuse of departmental authority, and possibly misallocation of training and staffing budgets." Daniel explained. "Your testimony aligns with several reports we've received." "Several?" So it wasn't just me. I felt something shift, not relief. Not yet, but confirmation. The problem had never been my performance. It had been a system that allowed someone like Diane to operate unchecked. What happens now? I asked. We review your documentation, cross-reference it with internal records, and escalate findings if necessary, he said, if the evidence supports it. This will move to board-level review. The board, not HR, not middle management. The people who actually had the power to change something, understood. I said. When the call ended, the room felt quieter than before, but not empty, focused. I sat there for a few minutes, replaying everything in my head, not the argument, not Diane's threats, the facts, the timeline, the proof. For 10 years. I had been documenting my work out of habit, tracking issues, saving emails, keeping records in case something went wrong. I just hadn't realized one day. Those records would be the reason something finally went right. My phone buzzed again. A message this time. Diane, we need to talk. Come back now before you make this worse for yourself. I stared at the screen for a second, then typed a single response. You should worry less about me and more about compliance. I hit send and set the phone down. For the first time since that meeting, she wasn't the one in control anymore. 2 days passed without a single call. No threats, no apologies, no desperate follow-ups, just silence. It should have felt peaceful, but it didn't. Silence in a company like North Vale never meant nothing was happening. It meant something was being handled behind closed doors. I tried to distract myself, but my thoughts kept circling back to that call with Daniel. The way he spoke, the certainty in his tone, the fact that, for the first time in years, someone had actually listened. Still, doubt crept in. What if nothing came of it? What if Diane managed to twist the story before anyone saw the full picture? What if I had just walked away from everything, for nothing, on the third morning? I got my answer. My phone rang just after 9, this time. The caller ID wasn't blocked. North Vale Systems Board Office. My chest tightened as I answered. Hello? Erla Moore, a composed voice said. This is Barbara Ellison, calling on behalf of the Board of Directors. The board? I straightened without realizing it. Yes, I'm here. We would like to schedule a meeting with you regarding your resignation and the ongoing compliance review. She continued. The chairman has requested your presence. Requested. Not suggested. Not optional. When I asked, today, 3 p.m. Please bring all documentation you referenced in your interview. 3 hours. Understood. I said, when the call ended. I sat there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. This wasn't about me anymore. This had moved beyond a single manager. Beyond office politics, this was something bigger. At 2:45, I walked back through the glass doors of North Vale Systems. The building looked exactly the same, but it didn't feel the same. A security officer I didn't recognize was waiting for me at the front desk. He nodded briefly and gestured toward the elevators. No badge, no access card, just an escort. That told me everything I needed to know. By the time we reached the top floor, I could feel it clearly. Something inside that building had already started to break. The conference room on the top floor felt colder than I remembered. Half the board was already seated when I walked in. At the center sat Arthur Bennett, the chairman, quiet, composed, the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. To his right was Daniel from compliance, a thick binder resting neatly in front of him. My binder. Across the table sat Diane. Her posture was rigid, arms crossed, jaw tight. The confidence she carried in every meeting before was gone. Next to her, Rachel looked pale, eyes fixed on the table like she wished she could disappear into it. Erla, Arthur said, gesturing to the empty chair. Please, sit. I did. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Arthur folded his hands together. We've reviewed the preliminary findings, including the documentation you submitted. Before we proceed, I need to ask, do you stand by everything you provided? Yes. I said, no hesitation. He nodded once, then turned to Diane. You stated to Human Resources that Ms. Moore resigned due to declining performance and emotional instability. Do you still stand by that claim? Diane lifted her chin. Yes. She became difficult to manage, uncooperative. Daniel slid a printed document across the table. Is this your email? He asked calmly, stating that Erla Moore was the only individual maintaining operational continuity across multiple departments. Diane's fingers tightened against the table. That email was taken out of context, she said. Arthur didn't look away. Was Rachel Whitmore hired based on qualifications that met the requirements for the role? Diane opened her mouth. But Rachel spoke first. I didn't apply. She said quietly, Diane asked me to take the position. The room shifted. A board member leaned forward slightly. And were you capable of performing the responsibilities assigned to you? Rachel hesitated, then shook her head. I was still learning basic systems, she admitted. Silence settled over the table. Arthur turned back to me. Erla, please describe your experience in your own words. So I did. Calm, precise, controlled. 10 years of increasing workload, promises that never materialized, responsibilities expanded without recognition, decisions driven by favoritism instead of competence. No anger, just facts. When I finished, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Arthur nodded. Thank you, he said. Please step outside while we deliberate. I stood, gathering my things, as I passed Diane. She leaned slightly toward me, her voice low and sharp. You're going to regret this. I stopped for just a second, then looked at her. No, I said quietly. I regret waiting this long. And then I walked out. The wait outside that room felt longer than the 10 years I had spent inside that company. I stood by the window, watching the city move like nothing had changed, cars passing, people walking, normal life continuing, while everything I had known hung on a decision behind a closed door. After what felt like forever, the door opened. Arila, the security officer said, They're ready for you. I walked back in. No one was speaking. Diane's face had lost all color. Rachel sat still, hands folded tightly in her lap. Daniel gave me a small nod. Arthur looked directly at me. We've reached a decision. I sat down slowly, my hands resting in front of me. After reviewing all evidence, he continued, the board has determined that your resignation was not voluntary. It was the result of sustained mismanagement, policy violations, and abuse of authority. A quiet breath escaped me. Then he turned to Diane. Effective immediately. Your employment with Northvale Systems is terminated. She stood abruptly, voice rising, but no one responded. Security stepped forward, and just like that, she was gone. Arthur looked back at me, his tone softer now. Erla, this company failed you. For a moment, I couldn't speak. We would like to offer you the role you were denied, he continued, with full recognition. I held his gaze, and this time I chose my answer carefully. I learned that loyalty should never cost you your voice, for years. I thought being patient and working harder would earn respect, but silence only made it easier to be overlooked. The moment I chose to walk away, I didn't lose everything. I finally saw my worth clearly. If you were in my place, would you stay and endure? Or would you step out and face the unknown? I'd really like to hear your answer. And if this story meant something to you, your subscribe, like, or share might help someone else find the courage they need, maybe even change the direction of their life. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.